Operator, get me Jesus on the line. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Could be the other way. Jesus is saying, get me a saint on the line. This is the Grace Hour Show podcast coming to you from Baltimore and Greater Grace Church. And we're talking about the calling of God on our lives. And so I use that. There's a great song. It's Operator by, I think, Manhattan Transfer is the group that did it. Give me Jesus on the line. Operator information. There was a group in our church that used to, my wife sang in that group and they sang that song. It was really lots of harmony, lots of good times. But we're talking about calling. I'm Steve Andrulonis, a pastor here at Greater Grace. With me is Pastor Renaldo Brown. And we're going to talk about the difference between career and calling. And we know that a calling from God is a sacred and amazing thing. And if you're watching this program and listening to it, this podcast, you are probably interested in what God would like you to do by his wisdom and according to his purpose. And so we're going to break that down a little bit because career can say one thing to you and a calling says something different. And we're going to take the next 40 minutes or so to just dissect this and give you some information we hope edifies you and helps you pick up the phone when Jesus calls.
Wow.
Maybe that's too light because this is really. I guess this is a bigger subject than we really, right?
Sure.
It's a big. We want to treat it with some seriousness. Sorry.
Absolutely. No worries. I think for a lot of folks, it's one of those when you think about ministry.
Yeah.
When you think about your operation in the body of Christ, when you think about your living as a Christian, this is in your top 5 questions. When you hear that word calling, because it's such a spiritual word, a biblical word, it's not a practical word. Mm-hmm. So the world doesn't use that word. They try to use it, but they struggle to define it. So for many Christians, they struggle with it. Anyway, it's important to have an understanding. And by the way, we'd love to hear from you today. I get asked a lot of questions about this topic. This is your program to write in your questions about calling and career. What is vocational? What is bivocational? What is a vocation? What is an occupation? What is a career? What is a calling? Today is a great day to write in, reach out, let us know. Pastor, I've been thinking about this. Let me hear your story. Perhaps maybe you have a story about how your career is involved in your calling or how your calling is in your career. We'd love to hear from you. Please write in, reach to us. But just to start us off, I think a word that's important to understand here when you talk about a career and a calling is a word that's underneath these two words. It's called work. Because really, how you divide up your life, how you define your life is always a question of work. And when you talk about career, you're speaking about work. When you speak about a calling, inherently, somehow you're thinking about work. And work is not a bad word. It's not a bad word at all. But it's a word, our understanding of the word work greatly impacts our understanding of the word career and a calling. So what is work? Work is anything done by a person, whether for reward, pleasure, or merit of any kind. And work has always been a part of our relationship of living. Before the fall, men worked. After the fall, men worked. We participated in some level in work. But after the fall, our intention, our motive, and our reward changed. Before the fall, work was a participatory response to God in faith, obedience to him. It was a function of our relationship with God. It did not define our relationship with God. But after the fall, we lost our relationship with God, and work took a different meaning in our life. It became, you could say work became a necessity, a responsibility. See, before the fall, work was not a responsibility. And I want you to keep these two words in mind. Work was an opportunity. Before the fall, work was an opportunity within our relationship with God. After the fall, work is a responsibility that we had primarily outside of our relationship with God. That later on, that could be part of our relationship with God, but by design, because of the result of the curse, it was outside our relationship with God. So either way, on either side of the fall, you could say it this way, that man was created to do. But first, he was created to live, and the doing was only part of his living. But after the fall, the doing became a necessity for his living. And that's where the challenge comes in. I've got to be careful that my doing does not define my living, because then what I do defines how I live. It should be that my living I'll just say it this way: my living is part of what I do is part of my living, but does not say it that way. But I would say this earlier, like I said, work was designed to be a participatory response to God in faith, obedience to him. It was just a function of our relationship with God. It did not define our relationship with God. And when we lost the relationship in the garden, we lost the true function of work.
Yeah.
We lost it. Because if you don't have the relationship, you don't have the purpose for the work. So then the natural man, the fallen man, was limited to horizontal responsibility without what I would say is a vertical opportunity that's only found in our relationship with God. So that's where the natural man and the common man see work. It's a horizontal responsibility. And don't get me wrong, it's not a bad thing. It's a beginning thing. It's a beginning thing. It's where the natural leads us to the spiritual. We should be responsible. We should work. I know you've read 2 Thessalonians 3:10. The man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. Well, what Paul is addressing there, this is a side note, he's bringing, I phrase that verse this way, he's bringing clarity to our charity. That's what he's doing there. He's saying, okay, if the church, he's addressing the communal responsibility of the church to be involved in the world. Yeah. So he's saying we have charity, but he wants to define it a little bit. So that's what that portion's about. He's not arguing whether we should help people. But what I wanted to stick with is this word work, because it defines career. When I think about my career, I connect it to my horizontal responsibility. Yeah. And I phrased it this way. I call that, you could use the word occupation. You could use the word job. And by the way, because usually what it is this, it's a job that with a bit of stability, training, and experience becomes a career. Yeah. It doesn't start out that way. It starts out as an occupation or a job that becomes a career. So it's got potential. But I call all of that together the amalgam of the doing. This is my doing, okay? My profession provides income. I can keep my responsibilities. I can take care of my family. It's my doing, okay? The working. Like in Matthew 25:16 and Revelation 18:17, it's my doing. And the focus of that is advancement, paying the bills. It's a means to the end. The nature of it, I would say, is transactional. I do, I get, I do. So there's no vertical opportunity unless outside of a relationship with God. But unfortunately, my career rarely touches who I am in a profitable way. It just impacts how I live. So it has value, but again, the value is limited because of what it touches. And then there's the calling, and that's something different. My calling is a result of a relationship with God.
Yes.
And when you touch my relationship with God, you expose me to the opportunity of a calling, which is a vertical opportunity. Now, my vertical opportunity can actually enhance or impact my horizontal responsibility. But without that relationship, I don't have it. I'm doing what I'm doing. There's a benefit, but that's where that word vocation comes in, that word calling comes in, that word where I've got, it's part of my relationship with God. Now my work, for the word of work, has divine purpose. Yeah. Now I'm functioning in the work that's actually connected to my relationship with God, and part of it. Because I can be a policeman, horizontally responsible, but it doesn't touch my soul because I have no relationship with God. Yeah. But when I have the relationship with God, that's one of the huge differences between a career and a calling, the relationship with God. And I'll end this thought with this piece. I'll say the biggest difference between a career and a calling is one word: why. Yeah. My why is different from my career than when I would even call my calling the ultimate why, because it brings purpose to everything. Brings purpose to everything. The nature of my career is transactional, but the nature of my calling is relational. It's a relationship with him. It's relational. Yeah. So if it's relational, now my calling can touch it. It might touch my marriage. It can touch my children. It can touch everything. It can even touch my career.
Yeah.
It has the ability to infect my career. See, my career can never really infect my calling, but my calling can infect my career.
That's true. I'm thinking you're saying the why. I'm thinking if we enter into calling in the right way, the vertical way that you're saying, and letting whatever we do horizontally serve the vertical, then we've allowed the who of who God is. We allow the who of God to become the whole driving force of our why.
Absolutely.
Which is like, that was the big question, that the devil asked in the garden, like, why is God keeping this information from you? And the question is, do you know who God is? And they decided to pursue the question and let's see. And I think you're saying we're spirit, soul, and body. And I think when we talk about career, we are talking about something that we've learned about called soul power and the attachments that they bring. And like a career, if the career produces my identity, then it's a very fragile identity. But if I am serving God,
right?
If the Spirit of the Lord if the spirit of a man is the candle of the Lord, if God is lighting up who I am in the right way, then my body and soul are used for His glory and not for establishing an identity that is built on my looks, my accomplishments, my acquisitions, all those kind of things,
education,
and I think you're right. We're seeing the questions here, like,
beautiful.
What does it mean to have, to serve or work? And I'm saying, like, the difference is, like, if you are called by God, then you enter into service, and service is really devoted to the other, not to the promotion of yourself. And, so that's what we're talking. Like, a career can become a real identifying marker. It is the question that what do you do? Like, people ask you that all the time. Like, and then, I'm on a plane or something, or I'm like in like a jury duty or something. What do you do for a living? I'm like going, well,
it's a leading question.
It's a leading question. What you want to know what identifies me?
Exactly.
And I'm like,
who am I?
It's like, do I, and it seems like in our culture, we don't say, well, I'm a father of 3.
No one says that.
I'm a guy who's been married almost 43 years. I'm a father of 3. I got I
got a dog named Spot. I got a small house on Orford Road.
And by the way, I'm a pastor, or I'm a journalist, what I used to be, or I'm a restaurant manager, or those kind of things. We usually say this first. This is what I do, because that's what people really want to know. And it's sad because,
But it's where we are. It's like, in one respect, I get it. If all you have is horizontal responsibility, then your identity is limited to that. It's limited to the responsibility. So I ask you, what's your name and what do you do? Because that's all. Because the name is the label on what you do. I'm this and I do that. So, but when you bring in, we use a different phraseology here, dominant reality versus subordinate reality.
Okay.
When I am unsaved or carnal, the dominant reality in my life is what I do. It guides everything I say. It guides how I present myself. You go on a date. That's the first thing you say. What do you do besides your name? We don't ask you where you live. That's creepy. No, we ask you, what do you do? It's the leading question because it's your identity. Your identity is tied up with what you do. That's why when guys can't do what they do, it's stunning, the collapse of their life. It's like you see guys that worked on a job for 40 years and then they retire. They just kind of go to the job. They don't work there anymore. They just kind of go to the parking lot. Hey guys, just want to stop by and say hi. Because I've been coming here for 40 years. So this is me. And like, I don't know what else to do. So it's like, it's horizontal. It doesn't touch the real function of work. The real purpose of work was to be part of a relationship with God. It was a function of our relationship with God. And in reality, it was a faith-obedient response to God. It was really, Adam's work was just his faith, obedience, response to God. In his mind, it wasn't work. It was responding to God. And when you're walking in your calling, it doesn't matter what that thing that you're doing is. It could be small, it could be big. You are responding to God. And by the way, you have tremendous capacity. You know why? Because in that relationship, the relationship with God that you have, it is your capacity.
Yeah.
So then you find yourself responding to God and responding to God. And well, how do you do that? Because I'm called.
Yeah.
I'm called. So I have boundless capacity because in the relationship, God fuels our work.
Yeah.
He fuels. This is why we can do the good works. Because why? Because we are motivated. It is God, both to will and to do in Philippians 2:13. Yeah. Why is it God? Because God is fueling my calling with his capacity.
Yeah. I think I want to throw this in here. I think when we understand God, it speaks in early part of Genesis that God was working and then he did not work for a day. And I want to hear your take on this. We all know people who are just, even in ministry, who are just outsized in their effort. They are workaholics.
Yes.
And they come to miss this point that God brought on the seventh day, which is Sabbath. Because if you have no Sabbath, if you do not come to him in your, if you do not cease work, then you have like Sabbath is sort of like a real test of faith in my mind, because the Israelites were brought out of a time, out of a situation where they were whipped and driven and driven and driven and driven to make bricks, to build monuments to idols, all these things. And we know that in idolatry, there's always like this conscious kind of anything we know about idolatry in the ancient world, maybe in the world that you exposed yourself to in Africa, there was an idolatry. There was always trying to please the tree, the sacred tree or the sacred monument. Maybe you saw it more, but there's no Sabbath. There's no if you are true to your calling, you could rest and not feel like you're falling behind.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea of Sabbath. God says, I'm going to give you this day. And it was something that, God worked into all of the law of Moses. Like there's these moments when, okay, in the seventh year, you just let the land rest. You don't work on it. Don't worry, I'm going to provide for you. Don't think you have to like keep spinning the wheel to get ahead. You know what I'm saying? So if you are in a career, it seems like that would be a test. Am I living in a career or calling? I think your conception of Sabbath and rest really defines. If you think you cannot take a lunch break, if you think you cannot take a vacation with your family, if you think that you cannot give a day to meditate, worship, and just enjoy a great meal with your family as a Sabbath, then you might be living in a career and working for yourself, and burnout is coming.
It's a great point that you make. I would say, why did God stop working? Because he was not defined by his work.
Yeah.
That's the thought that I have. Work, what God did in creating the earth was part of what he did. It was part of who he was, but it wasn't defined by it. God was God before he did any work.
Yeah.
So he was who he was, but then he did what he did without changing who he was.
Yeah.
And if he didn't do it, he'd still be who he was. So he's not defined by his work in that way. I would say in my calling, there are moments when it looks like I'm doing nothing. Am I still called? There are moments because my calling is defined by what? Not by what I do, but by the relationship that I have. See, the calling is really, it's the manifestation of the relationship you have with God. And the gifts that are given in the direction and the portion that you have are just extensions of a relationship that you have. So when we in a career, there's no relationship. In a career, it's just responsibility. So I have to continue to do the responsibility to manufacture a relationship. I see folks that try to say, well, you take your job home, or I really love my job. I mean, you love what you do, but what you do shouldn't define who you are. And God forbid that if you love what you do so much when you don't do it, you're nobody. And that's what happens. But you can get burned out even in your calling if you stop seeing the relationship and you just see, well, I'm called to be a singer. Okay. But what's fueling that calling? Your relationship with God. Yeah. So if you don't sing, you still have a relationship with God. So when you sing, this is an extension of your relationship with God. It's not a requirement for your relationship with God. It's not a definition for your relationship with God. And by the way, it's not a foundation for your relationship with God. The cross is the foundation. So I have to make sure that I understand. I call the calling the being. I call the career the doing, and I call the calling the being. Yeah, because the calling is about me intrinsically connected to God relationally. The career is the doing. And I'm not what I do. I am who I am. When Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15:10, I am what I am, but he was talking about his calling. He was not talking about his career. When you read Acts 18, I think it's 16 through 18, he talks about tent making. Tent making was a career where he met Aquila and Priscilla. But his calling, when you read Galatians chapter 1, 15, 16, his calling, something different. He was called from the womb. Yeah. See that? It's relational. It's personal. It's relational. It's eternal. Your career is none of those things. Yeah. Your career is not, if you want to know how impersonal you are, go down to HR. You find out just real quick how impersonal your career is. Oh, well, I'm sorry. You're
an FTE, a full-time equivalent.
That's it. And you're serial number 74692. That's there what you are. And you're highly replaceable. So it's like, it's not personal, it's not eternal, and it's not relational at all. So I might feel good about my career, and there's nothing wrong with being positive towards it, but I don't want to say my career is my calling. But I can say you can be in your calling for a long time, and it feels like a career. Because maybe, and this is for guys that maybe do full-time ministry for absence, or even if you're bivocational, it can seem like because of the extension of time. Yeah. But be careful. Don't take something temporal that's a means to an end and make it spirit, and make it and replace your calling. But you can use your career to fuel, to finance, to make it possible to walk in your calling. You can operate in your calling in your career. You can do that. So in other words, the career cannot go into the calling, but the calling can directly impact in a big way your career. But so I think sometimes Christians are asking this question, Pastor Steve. Let's just go this question. Okay, Pastor Steve. So I know what a career is, and I have one, or I want one. Maybe I'm young and graduated from school. I want a career because that's what I can get married, buy a house, take care of myself, tick all the boxes.
All those details.
Which are not bad. The responsibility spreadsheet. I want to tick all the boxes so that I feel like I'm accomplishing something and being mature. I'm adulting. Okay. What is the calling? Yeah. And what does it impact on my Christianity? That's a great question.
Yeah. And I think, when you're thinking about that the number system, like the numbers have to add up, the data has to add up. You're really missing, like you're saying, we're emphasizing the idea of a calling is really the relationship. I believe that Paul, Priscilla and Aquila, they made tents with all of their might. They made maybe some of the best tents in Ephesus when they were there, and they were doing it. And even as they were making tents, we know that the sweat equity from Paul was something that blessed people, because people would take sweaty handkerchiefs and go and be healed.
That's not PC.
That's in the Bible. It's in the Acts book of Acts.
That's not PC.
That's right. Oh man, we're like, but I think that's what we're really trying to emphasize, is that it's all of these things are very important. We don't want to diminish what the responsibility. You did a very good thing at the beginning by saying, we do know this verse from Thessalonians that a man who doesn't put his mind to work, doesn't do the work, he should not eat. This is like, there are people who live as there's a multitude of verses called sluggard verses in Proverbs, and we know that a sluggard is really this is an idea of pride. That's what I would like to think. Like, okay, I want to say, okay, so I think what some people are tuning in today to the podcast and listening to it and thinking, I would really like to know God's will for my life, and you're thinking, what is my calling? And I would say be about the work that your hand has found to do.
Okay.
And then, like Moses in the backside of the desert, he's, he killed a guy. He's been out there for 40 years. He's watching over the sheep. And then there's a bush that's on fire. And I want to bring this, when God communicates to them, he's giving him a calling and he's giving him a mission. And this is going to be his career, in leading Israel. And there's something that is maybe a very good point to make, is like sometimes when God calls you, reluctance is not a bad thing to feel.
Yes.
Like, because we know Moses felt very insecure about his resume.
Yeah.
I can't talk well. So there's a difference. Reluctance is like you recognize your shortcomings.
Right.
I'm weak. Can you really use me? And God's saying, yes, I can use you. Reticence is a difference.
Wow.
I think reticence is like you have been called by God to something, and there's like an agitation in you. And it's like, I don't know if this is the right career move for me.
Yeah.
There's like and I think that is rooted in pride,
Then I would say rebellion. I would
rebellion. Reticence goes to rebellion,
because and you don't want to use that word, because who admits to rebelling against God?
Yeah.
But when God leads you somewhere, and by the way, I love this about God. He doesn't say anything once. He just keeps, God spoke once, but I heard it twice in Psalm 62, verse 10.
That's awesome.
That's
an awesome verse.
He just keeps saying it. So it's like, okay, God keeps putting this in my heart. But I like what you said there. Let's divide that up. Okay, the calling of God. God is not saying be irresponsible.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's go back to those two different words, the dominant reality and the subordinate reality.
Yeah.
When I don't know God, the dominant reality is only one.
Yeah.
I have one option. That is my horizontal responsibility
what's
to
going
work,
on right here?
pay my bills, feed, live. Okay, which is not bad. Okay. Then there is a second option presented because of my relationship with God. I only had one nature and I only had one option. Now I've got two natures. I've got the nature of God in my life through Christ. Now I've got a second option. So now God is saying, along with being horizontally responsible, I would like you to be vertically opportunistic. Use your faith and be vertically opportunistic. What I would like you to do is make that dominant reality of horizontal responsibility subordinate to a dominant reality of the calling of God. So then the believer who's walking with God in his calling, the dominant reality of his life is that he's called by God. And the subordinate reality is that he's, at the same time he's called, he's also responsible. He's not naturally irresponsible to be spiritually responsible. He's not, as they say, he's not so heavenly minded, he's no earthly good.
Yeah.
He's not that. But that word calling, I think of it this way. There's the call, there's the calling. The call is to know God. The calling is to make him known. And I really see, and that's the mission part. I really see it that way. Like, okay, God calls me to himself, okay? He called me to himself to know him. That's my call. I'm called to God to know him. And then the outflow of knowing God leads me to a calling where my gifts come into play, where my direction, my purpose, and the plan comes into play. And now I'm making God known on a mission. That's my calling. And that's going to directly impact a lot of my decision making. And this is where the reticent rebellion comes in. Like God says, you know me. Now I want you to reveal me. Okay, well, I got a job offer in Omaha, but you have a calling here in Baltimore.
Yeah.
When you walk with God, you're going to say no to some things and yes to some things. And you can't walk by preference. By the way, you can't even walk in your career by preference.
That's right.
What makes you think you can walk in a calling by preference? But somehow we hyper-spiritualize the calling and say, I'm called to Hawaii to plant a church on the beach. And God says, well, actually, I was calling you to North Korea. No. We don't walk by preference. We walk by faith.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. Take us through these questions here. I love these questions. And please bring your questions. This is a great, great topic. Let's see. From Peru. Well, actually, before that, how do you differentiate God's work from our work? Well, I would say, short answer, God is the architect and we are the instrument.
Yeah.
So be careful. It's not that you're using God to do his will, but God is using you to do his will. Yeah. So Philippians 2:13, we said earlier, we are the instruments of God. In Romans 6:13, we are instruments of righteousness. Yeah. So it's all, if you read Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, even the work that we do was apportioned beforehand by God. So it's not, you don't get any glory, you don't get any credit. It's all God's work, but we participate in God's work. That goes back to the part about the garden. Adam participated in the work of God. He didn't produce it.
No.
And so to get the right P, it's not participate, it's not production. We're not factories working for God, but we're participating. We're instruments. Like a fork participates in dinner, a fork does not make dinner.
No, that's right. Fork hasn't made any steak in my house. But I was saying, like you're saying, you're answering that question, is like we tend to categorize, like, and this is where people who do amazing things, plumbers, electricians, builders, all of these things, who the people who put the foundation, the most important part of any building is what's behind the walls and what's underneath the walls. And so, we see a very good exhibition, or not, what acknowledgement of the importance of work in the work of Noah in building the ark, because that was a 100-year project. And then we also see it in Aholiab and Ahisamach, these two guys who were committed to, it said they had the Spirit of God to fashion all of the things related to God's tabernacle. And those included pillars and bases. And it says, and they had the Spirit of God to teach others to do that. So we don't, anything that is in the service, if you are doing anything with a heart after God, then it's all wrapped up in his work, and all things are working together for his eternal purpose. So don't, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might as unto the Lord.
Right.
And this is, read Paul a few times, and you could see he's telling you, this is the way you work. He said, I said this the other night when I did the offering. There's Peter, James, and John. They got to do a lot of things. Yep. And then there is the betrayer. That's Judas, okay. And then there's the 8. And the 8 didn't get to do everything that Peter, James, and John did, but they got to be with Jesus all the time. And I like that when Peter, James, and John go into the garden for Jesus's great wrestling match with all those demons and everything, the other guy just got 2-word command: sit here. That's your work. Sit here. And I'm just thinking, like, sometimes, their calling that did not change. They were apostles. They weren't apostles that got to do this, but they were apostles that got to do this. And all of it works, right?
Absolutely. It works together for good. It's not my job to define my calling. It's my job to walk in a relationship with God, and he reveals that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting, because you discover your career, you think you have to discover your calling.
Yeah.
And God says, no, that's a Deuteronomy 29 deal. I reveal that to you inside of a relationship. It's not like you get the calling and then you get the relationship. You get the relationship, and in the relationship, you've discovered gifts, and you discover the calling of God. See, what is my calling? Well, first of all, part 1, you're called to God. Are you walking in the call to God?
Yeah.
And then in that revelation of knowing God, God reveals making him known. Another question. The difference between work and service, and would the calling be service or work? That's a great question. Pastor Steve.
I would say that service is wrapped up in the word calling. Like, you are called unto God, and so every work that we do is really a service to God.
Absolutely.
Just like, the tent making thing, I think it's really, there's a real important element there that's included. Why did Paul make tents? Why did Jewish families teach their kids something to do with their hands. I mean, Jesus was a carpenter. And David, why did he get called from the sheepfold? Because he gave himself as a young man, as a late teenager, to watching over the flock with all of his heart, to the point of going after a bearded lion to protect a lamb. It's like, so he didn't know.
Yeah.
David did not know until the day that Samuel poured the oil over his head that he was going to be called to rule the millions of Israel. But his calling to sing and praise the Lord in the night seasons while he's guarding dumb sheep.
Yeah.
It's like, it says at the end of Psalm 78, it says, David was called from the sheepfolds watching over the ewes great with young. It's like, well, what's your calling? Well, we have, it's breeding season and all of the lambs are being born, and I've got to watch to make sure that the ewes are safe to feed the lambs.
Wow.
It's like pregnant sheep or sheep who have just given birth.
Right.
That was my calling. It's like, so if you are, like we've said this, like if you are related to who God is and you're understanding your relationship, how did you say that? The reality of your relationship is more important. The vertical reality is more important, and it will define the horizontal services that you do, right? And,
I mean, that's the key, Pastor. It's like who you are to God is intrinsically more invaluable than what you do. Never forget that. Who you are to God is intrinsically more valuable than what you ever do for God.
Yeah.
Because the danger in this conversation today is because of our moral desire with the works perspective is that I could think today that what I do brings me closer to God. Martin Luther pulled back the sheet on that, because he came out of a culture of what you do brought you closer to God. Yeah. And the more you did, the closer you were. And we see that addressed in John 6:28, 29, and Mark 7:21 and 23. In both cases, God emphasized relationship far beyond what you do. I would say this to you right now, nothing we do brings us closer to God, but rather what God did brought God closer to us through the gospel. Yeah. So be careful that in your desire to spiritualize your career, in your desire to discover your calling, like if I just get my calling, I'll be more holy. If I get my calling, everything will be right with me spiritually. You might walk with God in your calling and stumble. You may walk with God in your calling and have moments of distance. You may walk in your calling and struggle. Don't assume the calling is an end-all to spiritual confidence or contentment. You the same way you struggle with God in your faith outside your calling, you can struggle in your calling and struggle at times. But remember, living as a believer is walking as a believer, whether I know what my call is or not. In my career, it's like I'm first called to Him. Yeah. That's it. If I call to Him, He gives me, in the power and the leading of the Holy Spirit, the balance between my career and my calling. And let's just say maybe I'm walking in a calling and I don't have a career. There are people that are walking in their calling. It was so funny. They know their calling, but they don't have a career. And naturally, they're looked at as failures. Because you don't have a career? What's wrong with you, right? Yeah. And then on the church side, you don't know your calling? What's crazy? What's wrong with you? So both, it's like we demand that you know what both of these things are. And it's possible to have a career and not know your calling and still walk with God. And it's possible to know your calling and not have a career and still walk with God. But the bottom line is your relationship with God is more important than anything else you will ever do for God.
Yeah. And I think, we heard from, Ben Scu the other night from our church, and he quoted Proverbs 3.
Yes.
And that's maybe like you're wondering where your calling is coming from. I'm not hearing like what my calling is. Like, trust in the Lord with all your heart. That's a good instruction.
Yeah.
Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him. That's another one. He shall direct your paths. This is like, and you put that together with what Paul was saying, pray without ceasing, rejoice evermore. These are we could call, it's hard to say, maybe it's a bit wrong. We're saying these are general callings. These are callings that God has put on us.
Sure.
The first calling, I think, is like the first commission Jesus said is, come unto me.
Yes.
So you come unto me, you find rest unto your soul, you take his yoke upon you, and the burden is light. And you find that if you are weighted down by your sense of calling, then maybe you just haven't come unto Jesus.
Beautiful.
And found the rest that you need to have.
Yes.
And these verses that we heard on Sunday night from our pulpit, it's like, fear the Lord, depart from evil, do not be wise in your own eyes. It's like, these are the things, like the word of God gives us a lot of things to like just access and believe, and just to think about them. They are true. All calling starts with true before it can be good and beautiful.
Yes.
And like what we find in the truth is that we come unto Jesus, and then we are filled with the Spirit. And then, these instructions are there for us. They're fences, the institutions. Don't tear down the institution, right? Don't tear down the institution of the church and the Bible, thinking that, your feelings are supposed to be the thing that defines your call.
Yeah, you got to be careful that you let God define your calling, not you. I think I'm called to sing, and maybe you're not. I'm called.
Well, there's evidence.
Yeah, but is it not biased? It's so funny because that's the whole point of Corinthians. Half the Corinthian list was people trying to live in calling that wasn't theirs.
Yeah.
So I've got to be careful that I let God define things in my life. Number one, God defines what's true in my life. Number two, he defines it in a relationship with him.
That's it.
Number three, he defines it in his way, in his time. Yeah. So if God hasn't defined it, then he hasn't defined it. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. You can walk with God and not know your calling because you have a call. Yeah. So you might not know your mission. Am I supposed to go to Tibet and hand out Bibles? Or am I called to downtown Baltimore to street preach? I don't know. But I do know this. You are called to Jesus Christ. You are called to be saved. You are called to know him. You are called to a church. You are called to a church. The church is a calling, and the gifts and calling of God are without him changing his mind. In Romans 11:29, that is the Bible. So it's part of my life. It's part of my life. It's part of my calling. And I've got to be careful that if I try to make my career my calling, the career will be my church. And my boss will be my pastor. And that's why you see people on the job going to their boss for counseling, going to their boss. They get married, and all of the people that are in the wedding are their coworkers. Why do you and they're Christian? Why is that possible? Because there's they do not have any vertical opportunity because of they're divorced from their relationship with God. Yeah. Because if you're in a relationship with God, he will lead you to his body. Why? Because in Ephesians chapter 1, 22 and 23, the fullness of God is found where?
In the body of Christ.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where would we be without the body of Christ? Really, where would we be?
That's true.
So a lot of us in today's world, and by the way, the word career is kind of an old word. It's my generation. Yeah. This generation doesn't live by careers. In fact, this is the greatest entrepreneurial generation in the history of our planet. More and more folks are eating and living off of entrepreneurial expressions, and they don't have a career. They just have ways to make money, and they have opportunities and businesses and things that they do online and in person. So there really isn't a career. Most folks don't have a career. We think, well, they're foolish, but they're eating, they're living. So they've shown you that they can live without a career. But you were made for a calling. Jesus didn't die to give you a career. He died to open up the opportunity that you would meet your calling, and that you would come unto him, and that you would know him. And then as he leads you in your specific portion, he would show you moment by moment how to make him known in his church and in his world.
It's amazing. It's true for all of us. He's not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Change your mind. Church is a great place to find everything, really. Don't operate as the manner of some is and forsake your assembling together. Find that out. Well, friends, this has been the Grace Hour Show, our podcast coming to you live from Baltimore. And we want to thank you for being a subscriber here. And you can subscribe on many platforms, YouTube and Apple and Google, Spotify. And we're grateful for all those who subscribe and also for all those who comment here. Thank you for helping push the program today. Right?
Love your questions.
And we just pray for all of you. We pray for all of you that you would know God in the deepest possible measure, and He will lead you in the way that you should go. So for Pastor Renaldo Brown, I'm Pastor Steve Andrulonis, and our engineer today has been Jehu Vandeveer. I want to thank him for fulfilling his calling
Absolutely.
to produce this show today.
It's not a career.
Hey, it's not a career, it's a calling. Thank you, everyone. Join us for the rest of the programs related to calling this week.